Today we have a crazy story of an entitled parent who feels threatened by a 5-year-old. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, my dad yelled at us over using sunscreen. I, 30-year-old female, want to preface this by saying I'm almost no contact with my bio dad for a million reasons. However, this summer was my grandma's 80th birthday and my family got together to celebrate. It was my dad's mom, so he was there along with 5 out of 6 of us kids. Youngest is 19 and I turned 30 soon after the trip. One of these days of the visit, we did a sibling beach day which included our dad. My sister, 25, and I were putting on sunscreen. Our aunt literally just had skin cancer removed from her scalp. We made sure we weren't near anyone and were only spraying ourselves or each other. My dad flipped because sunscreen is on a long list of things he doesn't believe in and thinks is toxic. He started shouting at us that we were spraying it on other people. Not even him, just the wind may have carried it onto the bag of somewhere near us. I stood my ground and explained we literally checked prior to starting to make sure no one was around to get sprayed. This resulted with him going into a few inches from my face and yelling at me aggressively to keep talking back and see what happens, which resulted in me having a panic attack because of my PTSD, which he then belittled me for and said I needed to get over. He then later on the trip criticized my choice in men despite him literally being the reason I'm so comfortable being with people who are abusive. He also caused me to miss my flight because he was busy screaming at my grandma until she cried. Airport was over an hour away and no public transportation in this area. He gets upset if I don't stay in contact with him and that I'm closer to my stepdad than him. I literally only see him at family events maybe once or twice a year, and we have virtually no relationship with each other outside of that. I still love him because he's my dad, but he's trash at being a parent, and did some serious psychological and sometimes physical damage on me and my siblings. I am way better off when he's not around, and the older I get, the harder it is to associate with him. Surely the other people around see this kind of behavior happening, right? Like they're not going to just excuse it. Are they? Or are they all just kind of enabling that kind of behavior? Is that why they are allowed to get to that point in their life? Sarsar Sam commented, hopefully your other siblings are also no contact with him. Going full no contact could be helpful if you'd want to go down that route. He seems like a nightmare and abusive to be around. OP responded saying, my brothers are for the most part. Unfortunately, my sister talks to him almost every day because she feels responsible for him and is resentful that the rest of us don't step up to help. He's disabled and has been homeless off and on. She's been put in the position of being his caretaker from a young age, whereas he was much more absent in my life overall, and my mom was camp, not your problem and don't take it on. I feel guilty sometimes because he does need a lot of help and I hate that my sister bears the brunt, but I'm not willing to subject myself to what it would take to help him. He's so volatile that having a carer or agency work with him is not an option. I've said that if my grandma works out of trust, I'll take over as payee, but I'm not willing to do the day-to-day support the way my sister is. My sister has done a lot of guilt trips around the fact that she couldn't live with herself if something happened to him, and I feel for her because a lot of it is how she was brought up. But she's unwilling or able to set boundaries as an adult, and that's not a rabbit hole I can follow her down. My younger brothers are pretty solidly freak him in their approach, but they've definitely had their share of baggage and issues from being his children. All 4 of my youngest siblings on that side have the same mom, and they definitely had to deal with a lot more of him over the years than myself or my older brother did because our moms never married him. My mom actually left the country without telling him when she found out she was pregnant, so I didn't meet him until I was 4, but that's a whole other story. My oldest brother is probably the least connected, as he didn't meet any of us until we were both 14. I probably have the most connection with that brother, as we grew up on the same coast, and my mom would facilitate my ability to visit him when we would visit that state. He even worked for my stepdad for a summer, and is the only sibling out of my dad's kids who's ever spent a birthday with me. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of entitled parents, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, Mother Can't Handle Walking Away. My mother and I have been through a lot. We've had multiple phases of our relationship being rocky, and this year it's only been getting worse and worse. The beginning of the summer, I gave her the ultimatum of we're not able to work through this all on our own anymore, we need a therapist, and the boundary that she's not allowed to say things that invalidate my experience Like, I never did that, or that didn't happen. Yesterday, my mom does one of these things she does where she says, I'm going to tell you something that you probably won't like to hear. This time, it's a familiar one. I feel like you don't care about contributing to the household because you won't give me your school grant money that's left over after your tuition is paid. I shut the freak up because we've had this conversation 5 times. It's not worth me telling her the same things I always tell her for a fight to break out, so I leave it and I walk away. Then, less than an hour later, she's like, I have something else to say. At which point I tell her no. I tell her I don't want to talk. I don't want to repeat the same conversation we've had. She pushes me and I blow up a little. She expresses that she thinks she's had an epiphany as to why she's feeling the way she does. I say, okay, I'm sorry I blew up a bit there. Let me calm down for a minute. We go on to have a fairly productive conversation until I trigger her. The reason I put those quotation marks in there is not because I don't think triggers are real or any of that stuff, but rather because this particular trigger is any description of her behavior as being negative. Words that are banned because of this trigger are as follows: yell, shout, scream, snap, snarl, gripe, complain, criticize, raise your voice, nasty, mean, loud, tense, angry. We were having a productive conversation about appreciation and the ability to show it. She was talking about how she wishes I would do work in front of her or talk to her about how she looks tired, etc. I was expressing the fact that I've taught myself never to do these things because some of the time it's the wrong thing to do and she screams it at me. Obviously, I didn't say that because I was dancing around the trigger words, but you get my drift. I believe my exact sentence was, you can have a negative reaction, snap or yell at me, or just be upset. Her reaction to this trigger is always resorting to dismissing what I'm telling her and telling me it didn't happen. This is really hard for me to hear from you right now because I haven't yelled at you for years. We had a fight at the beginning of the summer that led to me giving her that ultimatum about finding a therapist, in which I finally managed to meet all of her requirements of me regulating my behavior and walked away appropriately, even though she was screaming bloody murder at me from the kitchen as I was going down the stairs. So I walked away, as I told her I would every time she invalidates my experience. We didn't talk for the rest of that day. Today, people are sleeping in. I see on my phone she had to go out at 2 a.m. to help the family friend, so I take care of the dogs. I'm finishing getting my breakfast in the kitchen when suddenly everyone else in the household is present. My mother says thank you for feeding the dogs and I want to be nasty to her. I'm frustrated about the day before and I'm angry at her and resentful that she can go out of her freaking way to help this random kid, but she doesn't care enough about our relationship to manage her own triggers. So I don't say anything. I ignore her and I take my food and I leave. I don't trust myself enough in that moment to say anything nice, so I don't say anything. Not immediately, but within the next 5 minutes, she comes down to my room to ask me if I'm not speaking to her. I say no, I'm not. She says why not, and I say I'm feeling angry right now. This is unacceptable to her. She's telling me that why could I possibly be angry? It went so well. Everyone did great. She's standing in my doorway, trapping me in my room, trapping me in this conversation, demanding an explanation for why I feel the way I'm feeling and why I chose not to engage with her. I did my best to stay as calm as I could and communicate clearly about what I was feeling and why. But nothing I said was acceptable to her. It wasn't okay that I felt angry because of her actions. It wasn't okay that I felt frustrated that she's unable to even try to manage her triggers. It wasn't okay that I'm upset that I'm always the one that has to remove myself from the situation. And she's standing there, glaring at me, asking me to calm down. I have no way to walk away. She has trapped me in my room in this conversation and is repeatedly telling me that nothing happened. I have to scream bloody murder at her that she needs to leave in order to get her out of my doorway and get out of the freaking conversation. She's allowed to tell me anytime I'm too loud, or I sound angry, or I'm shouting, or I'm screaming, or anything. She's allowed to tell me that I'm invalidating her feelings anytime that she wants to, or that I need to calm down or walk away, but she never walks away. She never manages her triggers or treats me with the freaking baseline respect of assuming that I'm not lying to make her look bad. I'm so freaking sick of this. She thinks she's entitled to my emotional support of her at any point in time without regards what I'm thinking or feeling, and she's entitled to say whatever the freak she wants about my behavior, but if I ever criticize her, I'm the bad guy and nothing happened. She never apologizes for her behavior, she never makes amends, and she never changes her behavior. She thinks she's entitled to my constant improvement without putting any effort into our relationship. I wish to God I didn't have to live here. My life is the best it's been in a long time, and she seems dead freaking set on making sure that the beginning of my semester is a freaking nightmare. I am so close to being able to take on an actual career and actually break free of this crap. I'm about to get a goal I've been working for so long to reach. She doesn't see that she's burning these bridges between us by refusing to even try to improve our relationship. Honestly, I just hope that there's some way sometime soon that OP can have that distance and that separation and likely move out. I think there's a lot of truth to, with especially entitled parents like this, having that extra space makes the relationships actually way better. When you're not physically in proximity to them and they can't just drop in on you anytime and kind of lay their entitled behavior on you, it tends to become a lot easier to remain civil with them. Altruistic Lock 5362 commented, "You need to get away from her. Get a restraining order if you have to, but the woman is unhealthy for you. Definitely not a friendly lady. Why do you allow this abuse? Family is not just blood relatives, it's people that live and stick by you. She definitely does not do this. You need to get away from her permanently, break all communication, break all electronic communication. Get off on your own, but save your mental health. In my opinion, you need to do this." This next story is, "Want to claim my mom by marrying her? Have fun getting a divorce." For context, my biological father traumatized me and my mom when I was 3. My mom already had bad experiences in the past with men, and I from then was terrified of them too, but she was still open for dating and wanted me to have a father figure since the original one was a clear no, so she met a guy that I'll call Steve, and ever since I can remember, I never had a good feeling about him. That feeling was quickly explained by lots of weird things that happened when I was still too young to remember, so I'm telling you here what my mom told me, and of course as the years passed I remembered more, so here it goes. She met this guy on a dating app and the feeling between them passed correctly through some stuff were odd. He was relying on his parents a lot for money related things, and his ex was quite literally crazy. They had a dog which he had to pay the food for but never got to see, and it was perfectly fine with him, but my mom, being his partner, put an end to this very quickly. Steve never had any children, nor never was a close uncle to his nephews, so he never actually knew what taking care of a child implied. This is important for later. As the years passed, he was getting more and more aggressive with me mostly, and I never knew why. He would constantly yell at me for no reasons, and I remember a few particular instances where he really got on my nerves. The first one was when I was around 10 years old. I was walking around on a weekend in my own house in a tank top and underwear. Normal for a child, right? Well, apparently not. As I was walking down the stairs to go get breakfast, he started again screaming at me and said something along the lines of, "Why are you walking around dressed like a tramp?" Mind you, we didn't even have anyone in the house. It was just my mom, him, and I. But she was sleeping, so she didn't hear any of this. He was generally very weird, and then came the age when I learned about sexuality and all of its implications, so I started understanding things that were happening at the time and that happened in the past. He never was sexually weird with me, but I therefore realized he was weird with my mom and almost constantly talking about sexual stuff when she was around, and the explanation for this was that my mom fell into depression and she didn't want to do stuff with him, so he was constantly trying to get her in the mood, not caring if I was around or not. So one day I just snapped. He was talking about sexual crap with my mom while we were dining, and I was disgusted because no kid likes to hear about their parents' fun times. So I said, "Bro, you have a hand, internet, a personal room, and toilet paper. She obviously doesn't want you, so shut the freak up and go do your own thing on your own, or at least stop talking about that when we're eating." Yes, I developed a temper since I was tired of getting bullied by this fat butt, and he had the absolute audacity to say that I should be saying these things? Like, bro, you're the one who started talking about sexual stuff at the table, for freak's sake. But anyway, after like 3 years, my mom still accepted his proposal and got married. A few months before that, I caught something weird, again, and it didn't seem weird at first, but when my mom explained, I was disgusted. Steve was really into cars, but in a weird way. He would listen to engines starting and be happy about it, listen to them on loop in full volume in the house, and would show car stuff to everyone, even though not a single soul in the house gave a crap about it. And so when I saw my mom and him on the couch with her trying to get away from him showing her a video, arm raised, I thought nothing of it other than, she clearly doesn't want to see whatever car crap he's showing her and will get a cramp in his arm if he stays like that for too long. So I told him, I think she's not really interested in the video you're showing her. And he, again, screamed at me for invading their couple life. And I didn't understand how a car video was invading their lives, but okay. Later on, my mom informed me that the video was in fact not about cars, but a very explicit video about libido that he was playing without headphones while I was right behind them doing my homework. A couple weird instances like that happened, but fast forward to the wedding. I still honestly don't know if I cried of joy or sadness that day, but I did cry. And my mom was happy for once, so I tried to smile. I still don't know why she accepted to marry him because he was being a bench all the time. My mom has a very rare chronic illness that literally fuses her articulations with her bones, which is extremely painful, to which the only treatment that exists only slows down the process. And he told her he would not take care of her if she was to get paralyzed because of her illness, and she needed crutches at the time to be able to move. 4 months after this, she realized he was cheating on her through the same app they met and was sharing all their bedroom moments and her traumatizing backstory. She confronted him and he said he felt bad and needed someone to talk to about everything, so she told him that she knew a few psychiatrists, but that none of them were reliable if he found them on dating apps, and that she felt horrible that he shared all of her life with random strangers, but that somehow didn't engage the divorce process. During all the time we were all three as somewhat a family, he kept on implying that I was receiving better treatment from my mother than him because she was telling me that she loved me, but not to him. Gee, I sure wonder why. And that I was receiving way more hugs than he did. And he kept on telling me that the wheel was turning when I was screaming back at him for more bullcrap that he was mad about. But one day my mom had it. She couldn't take care of her own long hair anymore because of how much pain she had in her hands, and she decided to go get them cut without Steve knowing because he was fully against it, and she came home with much shorter hair. And when he came home, he snapped and made a big deal about it. Told her it made her look like an old sack and that he hated it. When she explained why she cut her hair, he answered with, "I don't care. I loved it long, so you should have kept it long." And 3 days later, she was telling me she was getting a divorce and an apartment for her and I. I was hyped, but didn't say anything because she wanted to tell him herself. But me being me, I vomited the whole thing when we had an argument, which yet again went to the, "I'm the one paying this and that, and if you're not happy about it, you're free to leave and get your own apartment." To which I answered in the heat of the moment, "Oh, do not worry about that, it's on its way." And when his jaw dropped, I realized what I just said and went upstairs from where I heard him cry. When we did move out, he tried to make me feel bad for his own actions, and in a moment where we were both alone, he told me, "Happy now? You finally got us to divorce. You, your mom, all for yourself now, like you always wished." And I realized he was jealous of the love that my mom gave me, which is seriously weird, what? And I answered with, "Remind me who she's separating herself from again? Thank you." And I left. He tried to get to her later with the famous, "I think I'll end things if you don't come back." And my mom never cared because, first off, he was a coward and would never do it. And second off, he's a grown butt adult who makes his own choices, so why would she care? Everything was fine for the first week in our new place until we realized he was stalking us. And mostly my mom's car that she had parked near the road, so he knew if she wasn't home even after the divorce and would ask her why she wasn't home, etc. He kept being creepy until one day I posted a photo of my mom with long hair holding another man's hand, who we couldn't see the face of, who's now my current and way better stepdad than Steve ever was. Since then, Steve has blocked us all and stopped stalking us. In short, stepdad was jealous about my mom's relationship with me, mentally abused us for it until she asked for divorce, and he still acted like a bench because he thought marriage was a trap for her to stay in, but stopped being annoying once my mom rebuilt her life. How can you leave me? I am Steve. In all seriousness, I was gonna say I'm glad that the story ended with the person leaving this awful partner, but at the same time there was also like 3 years of sticking around and getting married to somebody who was clearly awful. Like, I'm glad that they finally got out of there, but it kinda took a while. Damien Link commented, "Oh god, that separation should have happened so much earlier. I'm sorry for your childhood trauma regarding this man, and I'm happy you're in a better situation now. I hope your mom's okay." OP responded saying, "Thanks. I'm much better now and my new stepdad isn't such an entitled bench. He loves her and promised her he'd take care of her even if she couldn't herself. I struggle to appreciate him, but I see how much happiness he's giving her. I had to work a lot on my anger issues, but therapy helps." Our next story is, entitled mother gets butthurt by my son's resting grouchy face and calls my son autistic. Let me tell you the tale of my interaction with one of these entitled parents I've only ever read about on here. It's not as dramatic as some of the tales on here, but I was almost excited to meet one out in the wild. I was beginning to believe they were born of myth and Reddit legend. I guess when you live in the countryside where sheep and cows are more plentiful than people, the chances of meeting one are slim. Now, my son, 5, and I, female, 39, are multilingual. I speak English natively and what I like to call toddler Polish. I left Poland at a young age and grew up down under. My son speaks English at home and German at school since we live in, Germany. He's native with both. During a stay in Warsaw, my old stomping grounds, I, for some inexplicable reason, decided to buy 19 kilos, 41 Freedom units for those in the States, of Duplo for my cousin. When she told me she was going to gather all the Duplo from her family's homes, some of which dated back to the early 90s, and sell it, I jumped at the opportunity to buy it. I didn't mention to her that I had been low-key eyeing that conveyor belt piece that my son so enjoyed playing with the last time we visited her home, but here's the kicker. She wanted to sell it all in one go, and all is what I bought, as well as an extra suitcase and luggage allowance to get all these danged blocks home. Well, after hours of playing suitcase Tetris, I managed to pack the Duplo in our luggage. Everything had Duplo in it. No bag was left unscathed. So when we checked our larger suitcases and made it to our gate, what did we do? We found a spot on the floor, whipped out some Duplo, and my son proceeded to do what 5-year-old boys do, lay his Lego space crew onto the conveyor belt and send them plummeting to their doom, aka the bed from the Duplo playhouse I whipped out from my handbag. He was having a great time, allowing me to zen out for a glorious few minutes to drink my coffee in relative peace after what was a stressful meeting and journey to the airport. Alas, the moment I noticed the snotty girl watching my son play, my spidey senses tingled, for she had nothing to play with, and her mother was on her phone, paying her no attention. Though cute, I don't necessarily like children. I'm an introvert, and children have big energies that are incompatible with my analog dinosaur brain. The love I have for my son naturally overrides this setting, as do my nieces and nephews, though barely, as their chaos is a whole other story. Things proceeded to get awkward as the snotty girl, 3 years old, approached and watched my son play with a miniature airport space prison battleship he had constructed in the time it took me to blink. Last month, he called himself a Lego artist. Believe it, this kid is going places. The snotty girl stared at my son for an awkward 5 minutes as he continued to do his thing, moving his blocks closer to himself when he eventually noticed her watching him. Eventually, the girl went to her mother, and after a brief exchange of words, I was face to face with an entitled parent. I just didn't know it yet. The first step was to establish a language of communication. The mother to me in Polish said, "Do you speak Polish, German, or maybe Romanian?" I reply, "Polish." The mother kneels beside my son while holding her daughter and starts speaking to my son in Polish. This annoyed me. "You want something for my kid? You ask me." I reply, "He doesn't speak Polish." The mother, looking confused, asked, "Why not?" I replied, "Because we don't live here. He speaks English and German." The mother to the snotty girl replied, "You can ask him to play in German." Too shy to ask, the snotty girl continued to chew her fingers as she shook her head. The mother asks, "Can my daughter play with your son?" I turned to my son, knowing and honestly hoping that he would say no. All that snot running from the girl's nose and saliva-drenched fingers opened a window into my future, one I wasn't willing to risk. I say to my son, "Offspring, this child wants to play with you. Would you like to play with her?" Without looking up from his toys, my son shook his head, and I say to the mother, "He said no, sorry." The mother to my son says, "Can she play with you? We didn't bring any toys." My son ignores her and continues to play without acknowledging her. He doesn't like strangers, and I don't force him to have uncomfortable interactions with anyone, let alone passing strangers at an airport. Even as a baby, I knew there was no mistaken newborn swap at the hospital, for my son had inherited my resting grumpy face. The mother must have taken offense to the curmudgeonly expression that is my son's face. I say to the mother, hoping she'd take the hint, "He doesn't want to play." The mother, observing my son, replied, "You should teach him to share." And there it was. I knew who I was dealing with. Flame on, claws out, Avengers assemble. I say to the mother, "And you should pack toys." She replies, "Is he autistic?" I ignore the intrusive thoughts and say, "No." The mother says, "Then why isn't he looking at me?" I tell her, "You're a stranger invading his personal space and trying to take his stuff." The mother says, "No, I work with autistic kids." I reply, "Okay then." I glared at her, waiting for her to leave, but she kept her eyes on my son. She says, "Does he smile or make eye contact?" I say, "Yes." The mother, eyeing my son, replies, "Does he normally play with other children?" I say, "With those he deems worthy of his invaluable time, yes." The mother, still trying to get my son's attention by waving her hand in front of his face, says, "Are you sure?" I tell her, "Yes, he doesn't want to play, now back off." The mother finally looked at me. My resting grumpy face was no longer resting and was genuinely grumpy, spurring her to grab her daughter and leave. The moment they were gone, my son looked at me and smiled and said, "She was rude." Me, shrugging, replied, "If you say so." My son asked what autism was, but since he had started watching Extraordinary Attorney Woo with me, I didn't have to explain too much as we had covered the topic before, but the word didn't click with him at the time. Of course, we saw this woman again. She was on our flight and looked mighty unhappy the entire time. When we were coming in for landing, the hostess even stopped by her row and asked her to put her daughter in her seat and put on her seatbelt. The mother said, "But she has a fever, she'll cry." The look on the stewardess's face was worthy of a chef's kiss, utter perfection. It was as if her very soul did an eye roll from within, and I felt my soul mirror her response. I felt her pain. After a few stern words from the stewardess, the mother put her daughter in the seat, put her seatbelt on, and wow, not a peep out of the girl as we landed. We made it to the luggage carousel and our bags were delayed by 30 minutes, so we found a quiet spot in the corner, away from people, where my son could ride his suitcase around without getting in anyone's way. He happily pretended to be a race car while riding around columns, leaving me to my rider's brain going haywire. I envisioned the delay of luggage was due to my suitcases exploding on the tarmac, sending copious amounts of colorful Duplo blocks, animals, trucks, and people figurines scattering all over. This naturally caused chaos for the airport staff, who had to clear it all before resuming their actual work. I feared this might happen while packing, but luckily, the suitcases eventually arrived, closed and unscathed, and I successfully smuggled 3 generations worth of Duplo blocks from Poland into Germany. Meanwhile, the mother continued to keep staring at my son, as if to determine whether he was indeed autistic, as she suspected. Meanwhile, he was having a wonderful time riding around on those pristine airport floors, perfect for suitcase racing, with a big smile on his face while she waited for her luggage. And yes, I do on occasion call my child Offspring. I also refer to him as child, son, kiddo, progeny, mini-me, small fry, broodling, kitty-wink, scion, munchkin, and anything else I can scrape from my demented brain, the eloquence of which, depending entirely on how caffeinated I am at the time, he loves it. Live long and prosper, and peace out. All OP's missing is the Kratos boy. Then I feel like they just about covered the entire gamut. Also, I had to look it up because I wasn't sure what Duplo was, but it's actually literally Lego that's just like jumbo Lego. I think I actually have heard about it before in the past, but I'm just not in the target demo. I haven't really messed with anything Lego in a long time, especially Duplo, which is Lego but specifically twice the size of regular Lego bricks, make it easier for the kids to handle. Back when I was a little kid, if we were playing with anything similar to Duplo, it was just some like cheapo off-brand mega blocks. Sarah Fire Lily commented, "I swear parents need to be more prepared when traveling with children. This mom should have brought stuff to distract her child. Also, adults need to stop expecting kids to share when we as adults rarely do. Also, I call my daughter child, baby, she's 5, and other things not her name." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy entitled parent story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.